In these brief recordings that are addressing the issue of how mindfulness might be a valuable practice for all of us in times of great challenge, such as we find ourselves in now with the coronavirus, I don't want to overlook probably the most important lesson of all, and that is the value of mindfulness practice when you're sick, when you're ill. Let's say that all of our attempts to avoid contagion are unsuccessful, and we do pick up the virus. Um, I'm gratified, at least as of now. It's not as lethal as the plague. You know, most people who get sick survive it. Only very few, mostly us older people, are succumbing, at least at this stage of the game. But, it's incredibly valuable to have access to this inner life and these practices of awareness when you're in physical distress, when you're in bodily distress. I can't tell you how many people over the years have said to me something like, thank goodness I have access to this mindfulness practice, as they encounter sometimes very serious medical conditions later in life or along the way. So I want to address the issue of mindful illness, if you will, or mindfulness practice in challenging, afflictive circumstances. And, we're used to thinking, this is the worst thing that can happen to a person, And in the storyline, it is. When we're telling the story of ourselves and the world and using concepts and words and so forth to create this model, this narrative of what's going on, when a person gets ill, that's a terrible thing to have happen to them. And of course, it's accompanied with physical distress, pain and discomfort and so forth. But, that's really the time to particularly to have the skills to know how to turn inward and look at what's happening. The conventional wisdom is that we should try to, avoid illness at all costs. And of course we should avoid getting ill in the first place. But once we're ill, that strategy of trying to resist or flee or avoid or run away from the illness and the distress that it causes, that strategy becomes counterproductive. It turns out that the distress that one feels from pain, the suffering that's caused by unpleasant sensations, is amplified by resistance to it. The more we push back, the more we fight it, the more we resist it, the more we wish it wasn't happening, the more that we hate that it is happening, the more we are contributing to distress and suffering. It's that desperately wanting it not to be there, which is, you see, even in my body, by saying that, it's bringing stress. It's bringing distress. It's bringing this kind of momentum towards greater suffering. And it turns out counterintuitively that actually turning toward the experience of the symptoms is often the most skillful strategy to use in dealing with illness and of various kinds. So let's say you get the flu, let's say you get the virus. Let's say that the respiratory symptoms show up, you're sore, your throat is sore, your fever is high, your body is aching, maybe there's a headache, and so forth. There's nothing you can do about that. Now, those are the aspects of the external world I mentioned earlier on that you have no control over. This is just what's happening right now. So the issue isn't, I wish it wasn't happening. You can wish that, but it's not going to help. It's just going to make things worse. You can wish that it would go away. Why not? But that's not in itself going to make it go away, you see? So insofar as this is what's happening, it's raining today when you wanted it to be a nice day. Your body is sick with the flu instead of wanting it to be healthy. The first thing to do is to accept the fact that that's what's happening. By accept, I don't mean welcome it, I mean to not resist it, to acknowledge it, to say, okay, there is suffering. The first noble truth in Buddhism. Suffering does occur. And when you're sick, you recognize it. This is what's happening to me now. It doesn't mean I have to like it, but not disliking it is actually a helpful strategy. So we turn to the sore throat. We turn to the headache. What exactly does it feel like? Instead of resisting it and pushing it away all the time, we're instead opening to experiencing fully as it is. And actually, illness presents us with a very useful set of physical sensations to explore with our awareness. True that those are mostly unpleasant sensations, even sometimes quite painful sensations. But insofar as we can't wish them away, and insofar as resisting them is not going to help us overcome them, the alternative strategy is turn towards the discomfort, turn towards the pain, and pay careful attention to it. As with all mindfulness of the body, we're simply being aware of what exactly does it feel like in this moment. And just as mindfulness practice is a refuge from the pressures of the outer world when they're distressing, and you have a sort of opportunity to get a break from that, so also engaging mindfully with bodily sensations, even unpleasant and painful ones, is a kind of relief from the storyline, the macro conceptual construction that I am the victim of this illness. I am suffering from this contagion. And so I'm simply suggesting that by all means, don't get sick and avoid the virus as much as possible. But if you do get it, and you do have to go through some period of some days where you have these symptoms that are very unpleasant, simply learn to be with them, to explore them, to investigate them. And you will find that it's a helpful practice. That the distress, the suffering is magnified by to the in direct proportion to the extent to which we resent the fact that it's happening. Again, you have to explore this in your own experience to see the benefit from it. But I leave you with that final thought that if you do get the illness, use these techniques of mindfulness, of fully inhabiting the senses as a tool for overcoming the distress that goes along with the discomfort. I think you'll find it helpful if you try it.